Yay. Aloha. And welcome to Wisdom Dialogue with Hope Johnson, coming to you from Hawaiian Paradise Park on the beautiful big island of Hawaii. Yay. Yay. Thanks so much for joining. Whew. So yesterday it occurred to me, got a really good lesson yesterday. When it occurred to me that we already forgave the world. Each of us already forgave the world. All that we're witnessing is a replay of a past decision. So it's like there's nothing even left to forgive. And this is where, and it was so interesting about that, is that this is where it just gets way easier. Because to have to forgive something is a burden on the mind, just to have to forgive something, because nothing's unforgiven, right? It's all forgiven. There's nothing unforgiven, including ourselves, and everything, even inanimate objects, whatever. But noticing that it already is forgiven, and it's more like a matter of remembering that it's forgiven, just remembering that it's forgiven. It's like, oh, thank goodness I've already forgiven that, right? And when you remember, it is already forgiven. And my friends Billy and Casey, I think this may be what they were talking about, because they're asking me about forgiving before a thing even seems to happen, right? And I think that's what they meant, because all of a sudden when it came to me, I started thinking about what they're saying about forgiving before, like not waiting for the thing to happen, but forgiving before. Yes, we have we have forgiven the world. So it's just a matter of being willing in the moment to see that, right? So when there's a sense of unforgiveness, let's say it's resent, whatever, the hateful feeling is, it's arising. Whenever there's any kind of unforgiveness arising in the experience, there's a feeling about it, there's a thoughts about it, stuff like that. It's just a matter of remembering, oh, thank goodness it's already forgiven, right? Rather than I have to forgive that. A lot of the times my friends are like, I can't forgive it. And, maybe if they know they already have forgiven it, and that's just a thought that's saying they can't forgive it. That's just the ego thought, because the ego doesn't want you to know it's forgiven. And, that's you programming the ego like that, out of fear, out of uncertainty. See, your mind hasn't gone insane. So your mind is certain about who you are. You just projected this idea. And then you got to believe in the idea. But that's really just like a small sliver of your mind that's being projected and believed in. It's just a small sliver of your mind that's doing that. So it's like the aspects of your mind that's doing that is like an aspect that you projected. You know why? Because the fearful thought, when the fearful thought arose that you were separate, the fearful idea that you were separate, that immediately got launched, because it can't be in the mind. That thought can't be in the mind. So immediately got launched as a projection. So the self that you've projected is made for that belief. and out of that belief. It's made to believe in that belief. Like separation is real. So separation being real, whenever unhappy thoughts and unhappy feelings arise, the self you made, it's automatically programmed to believe that it's true. So the self you made is learning. But you already know. So it's like, as that self that you projected, that you made is learning, it's getting closer to who you are. And at some point, it just vanishes because it's so close to who you are that it can't be held out as a projection anymore. So it's really afraid. It's really like the self that you made, it's really afraid. And you know, what is the self that you made? It's just made up of a bunch of thoughts. It's really one thought, and it's like extrapolated into like many thoughts, infinite thoughts, infinite self-thought. So it's make-believe thoughts. So it's programmed to be really, really scared of disappearing. And rightfully so, because it's not, well, it doesn't exist already as it is. But it's like this, it's attached to itself. That's why, like, they talk about unattachment and stuff like that. It's like, you already are unattached. It's just that this thing that you projected it to be attached to its own life. So it's like the knowledge is already there. The knowledge is already yours about who you are. Okay, that's already yours. This projected thing that pretends to be you, that masquerades as you, it actually needs your light, your wisdom. Okay, so you're not really able to go to sleep, but what you do is you hide from yourself the fact that you're projecting this thing. It doesn't need condemnation. That's not it. It's kind of like, it's okay to the ego child. It's basically like an ego child. Okay. It's okay to the ego child. It's okay. Yes, at a point, it just needs to know it doesn't exist. Right? At a point, it just needs to know that. Like for myself, my ego child, she just has to know that. She has to be aware of that. That she just actually doesn't exist. And it's okay. How does it feel to know that? It's a scary feeling. It's a scary feeling for the separate self. Someone might say, I don't feel scared at all. Okay, then you're not getting it. That thing that you set out doesn't exist. You're not getting that you actually believe that thing is you. But you know, even the belief, you're projecting it. So that's why in the moment that you're believing it's you, it's like you can have some relief too. That's what I noticed. It's like the fear will arise and there will be some release. Okay. It's this sense of, wow, I don't exist. And I remember being a kid and getting that sense that I don't exist, and then just completely grabbing onto thoughts to cover it up. So I was like, that's really scary. I'm not going there. I was probably like 11 years old or something. I'm not going into that. Let me just cover that up. And then it immediately occurred to me at that time, that's what everyone's doing. Right? That thought that you don't exist, basically this is separation never happened, is so scary to the thing that you projected out in time, that to protect that thing from that really uncomfortable feeling. Because you know, I know, like when I was a kid, I didn't have any idea that that thing being projected wasn't myself. I thought it was myself. That's why I was like, oh shit, I better cover that thought up. See, so I got a glimpse right there of what each of us did before we even projected time. There was a thought of being separate, and immediately with the thought of being separate, our mind knows that that separate thing doesn't exist. But we wanted it to exist, so we invested belief into it. And apparently we still want it to exist. That's why we're still investing belief into it and propping it up. For me, I also am aware that I really want to not have the separate self. That's the most important thing, to be aware of my purpose, my function as I go through time, of what, my purpose in time is, right? So it's like, you could say, as a separate self, that's where the willingness is coming in, from the separate self, knowing that it's actually in its best interest to let itself be used for basically abolishing itself. Right. If it's scared and it knows, or it thinks very strongly, it's like I say knows because the way it's identified as an ego self, how's it going to be for its own resolution, its own extinction, basically? How is it going to be for that? Ah, I love you guys. How's it going to be for its own abolishment? Right. And it seems impossible. It's like, how is that going to be for its own abolishment? It has to be okay with that. At some point, it is going to be totally okay with that. That's what I see. But from the ego mind, the question is definitely arising. How is it possible for this thing that I projected into oblivion basically to allow, you talk about allowing, who's going to allow? It's got to be a separate self allowing. It's like the separate self is allowing the truth to be told. I mean, who you are, it's not separate from the truth. It's not like you're ever separate from the truth. It's not like you need to allow the truth, like you are the truth. You're not doing anything. You're not going anywhere. And that's, that's why it's like, you don't have to try so hard, because all that's trying is a separate self. All that's even trying is a separate self. So what the separate self gets the awareness of, is I don't want to suffer anymore. Right? That's the first thing. It's like, shit, what drives us to spirituality anyways? Right? I'm not talking about when you're a kid and you're just raised in spirituality. I was just raised in like being like spiritual. I'd read the Bible and pray and wait and listen and witness and do all the things. But then as an adult, I wasn't interested in that stuff at all. It's funny. I just lost all interest like as a young adult. And then once I was like 35 years old, I was back on it because I was like, what is this? This sucks. Right? Like, what is going on? I mean, like, I was like, it was kind of okay when I like, you know, it all just seemed so much fun. And I was like in this really fun, easy to use body. And it just like, and then and then it gets to a certain point, you're like, shit, I got to take care of this thing now. And now there's like all these responsibilities and bills and blah, 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 whatever. And it was like, yeah, it was like, this, what is this? This sucks. This was what everyone's doing. What the heck? So that's when I got into spirituality. So that's what I'm saying. It's like we get into it in the first place because we're like, shit, I do not want to do this suffering. Like, how do you get out of it? Right? How do you get out of the suffering? At that point, your separate self, it has no idea that it's on a path toward abolishing itself. It has no idea about that. Otherwise, it wouldn't even go there. In fact, one really big draw toward it is that you want to get things for the self. You want to add things onto the self, like more money, a better job, some sexual partner, or love interest. When you're first going for it, that's what it's about. It's about adding on to the separate self. And then at a point, you're like, whoa, this thing doesn't exist. Whoa, that's weird. But at first, you're not even interested in seeing that. Those spiritual teachers that talk about stuff like that, you don't even want those guys, right? And at first could last lifetimes, actually. That first phase could actually last lifetimes. I get the sense that I have a lot of experience having replayed the ridiculous thought of separation a lot of times. Okay. Because what I get a perception of is people going through lifetimes of not wanting to know that they are living as a separate self, let's say. Not really living. Dreaming is a separate self. Still, the majority of the people, it seems, the popular spirituality, you can call it pop spirituality, is still all about getting something for the separate self. And that's all the stress. All the stress comes from that. All the stress that you experience, all the shame, all the lusting, all the wanting, it all comes from that idea that separate self has something to benefit. So unforgiveness is basically any upset or uncomfortable feeling that arises, something, not wanted, or afraid of losing something. You're afraid of losing something, something's being threatened, lost something, don't want something. That's all unforgiveness. So you are the light. You are the light on that unforgiveness. As a separate self that doesn't exist, that thing is going to let it in. And it comes from your awareness. It comes from your, basically, that's why there's nothing for the separate self to do. That's what I can see. There's just really nothing for anything to do. That's why that reminder all the time you can always relax a little bit more. I mean, who you are, you don't need to relax. That's not you. That's the ego self. It even does all of the talking. No one talks. There's no talking. I mean, I get the perception that I'm talking a bunch pretty often. But actually knowing that no one is talking relieves any anxiety around the talking. You get a perception of talking, and that relieves any anxiety around the apparent talking. The fact that you're not doing that. And that's why none of us are more advanced than other people. Too. That's the other thing, because we're all exactly the same. We never changed. Never changed means we haven't gone insane. We're viewing one that has gone insane. It's driven itself insane, but it doesn't exist. Insanity doesn't exist. That's why that thing is just unfolding. Even the choice between love and fear. Basically, it needs to become aware that that a choice between love and fear is occurring. Let's say it needs to learn that, and it will, just all by itself. There's no way to make it go faster. That's the other thing. There's no way to make the learning happen any faster. It's so funny. All this stuff, everything I'm sharing with you, everything is just all occurring. And it's by grace that we get every perception that we get. Every perception is by grace. Every perception is leading to the awareness of what this is. Stop hiding from ourselves. Alertness. There's an intelligence and an alertness that's behind everything. You can't even make a choice to sleep. It's so funny because it's so intentional. The perception, the perceived world, it's so intentional, but it's intentional chaos. It's intentionally chaotic. It's intentionally meant to show you that you are not who you are. Everything that you perceive engenders guilt. It all engenders guilt. The separate world is guilty world. That's why true perception is able to look on it with forgiving eyes. knowing that it is projected guilt, projected guilty thought. And you know what's funny? It's obvious that when it's looked on with the forgiving eyes too, that it softens. And I noticed the forgiveness and unforgiveness going back and forth. And when it goes to unforgiveness, in my mind, there's a quick willingness to be aware, to be alert to the fact that it's already forgiven. And all that is what's holding on to the guilty, resentful, whatever kind of feeling, whatever's holding on to that feeling, what you projected that's holding on, it's afraid of losing its life. And that's why it's holding on to it. And that's why it needs compassion. And then you are the compassion. That's what you supply. You are the supply for that. So basically, it gets to the point where it's willing to allow compassion to be supplied, even though it knows that that's going to abolish it. It's funny because it's made on a suicidal tendency anyways. It's already made on a suicidal tendency. Like it already is wishing for death and being afraid of it at the same time. But this is not death. This is something different. It associates its fear with a physical death. Right? But this isn't a physical death. This is just, it never existed. It's afraid of not having something that already doesn't exist. Because it's made with the ego, its foundation is an ego mind. It's fighting for its life at the same time. That's why there's so much conflict in it. So because it's been given an ability that you don't have this ability to think in terms of suicide, right? It could actually use that ability for the good. It wants to be abolished anyways. Its underlying purpose is to die. That's its underlying function. It's like it's going to die. That's the way it's programmed. It's a suicidal thought. So it's like that suicidal thought is a certain kind of ability. It's an ability. It's you could say it's a powerful ability in a dream, right? It's powerful ability, you can say, because look at everyone's dying. Everyone's making it. The illusion is everyone's dying in a dream. That's a powerful ability. You don't have any abilities. You don't need them. You're already complete. An ability is a potential, right? You don't have that. A potential, as if you could make this happen. You don't have anything like that. You don't have any potential. You're complete. So the ability that you gave yourself can be used for the good. The individual separate self that you projected wants to die anyways. And it has the ability to kill itself anyways. That's why we perceive death. Whether you get there through old age or an accident or whatever it is, it's you making it up. It's a suicidal thought. Well, let's say it's you as a projected self. I mean, really, that's who needs to hear this shit. You don't need to hear it. It's the projected self that needs to hear it, right? So it's like you're giving this talk to yourself. Like you're giving this talk to yourself right now. Okay? To your projected self. So it's really a gift to you, to the real you. But it's the projected self that's going to hear this, right? You already know. It's the projected self that's got it, because you projected it out in time and you gave it the power to do this forever. Okay. So that willingness, it arises naturally. That's why, it's always talked about a little bit of willingness to make it easy on the separate self. Because this seems impossible for that, for the one that you projected. This just seems impossible. Okay. But really, it's a lot of willingness because it's your real will that this separate self is abolished. And so making it, it could be really easy. It could be really gentle. It could be really playful. Enjoying the time as a separate self. Just enjoying that time as a separate self. It's not like you have to, and again, I'm talking to it because you don't need to hear this. You already know. So it's like, it can be really easy. It can be really gentle for you. Your whole main thing is you don't want to be suffering. That's your whole main thing. So you're getting a perception of suffering, and it could be really easeful for you because really the suffering isn't a reality in the first place. But you are under the impression that it is a reality because you want to be a reality. As a separate self, you want to be a reality. Okay? And you are not a reality as a separate, you're not that. You're not a reality. As a separate self, you're not a reality. Here's the thing. When you're abolished as a separate self, you're not going to know about it. You're not going to care. That's the thing. You're not going to care. You're not going to know about it. As a separate self, you're going to be forgotten. Completely forgotten. Forget about people in the world remembering you. That doesn't mean shit. The whole world rolls up, disappears. Their separate identity is also forgotten. Do you see why there's so much resistance to this? It's so intense. It's so intense for this thing that you projected in time. Humanity. That's what humanity is. It's a sad fucking story, and it's an impossible situation. But you wanted to believe that the impossible was possible. And then you changed your mind. You already forgave it. But the separate self you set out as a projection doesn't know that yet. Doesn't fully know that. It's reporting back to you about what's going on here. It's just reporting back to you about all this matters of being separate. Matters of being a fucking idiot, basically. It's reporting back to you those things. And all you ever are is loving and compassionate toward it. Even when you get the impression that you're being mean to yourself, you get the projection, oh, there I am beating myself up again. It's like that is actually already forgiven because it doesn't happen. And that's really where the relief comes in, because now you don't have to try to stop doing that. There is no suffering. There is no being mean to yourself. I mean, yeah, first the separate self needs to know that, hey, that's being mean to yourself. But then at a point, like where it's opening up to at this point is that there is no meanness. That's what the forgiving before means. It's already forgiven. So the awareness that it's already forgiven, it brings so much relief. And you know, the separate self gets abolished through release, which is very interesting because it's like it's unwilling to let that much relaxation occur. Really, that much relaxation, and it's mental relaxation. I see the reaction over the years. I've seen the reaction of people when I share with them how much I'm allowed to react, I'm allowed to relax. You know, one that really sticks out in my mind, this person pulled me aside and told me that I'm totally on the wrong track when it comes to spirituality, that I'm going to find out that I'm on the wrong track, and I'm going to and that if I don't turn around right now, this it was like a whole fearful kind of thing. And I go, oh, well, if I'm on the right track, I'm sure it'll be made right in time. And I go, I don't need to do anything about that. And the person goes, really? That much freedom? And I'm like, yes. And so at that moment, there was a healing. Like I could perceive it. I could perceive just the awareness come into the person's mind. It was just like, whoa. It was kind of like, whoa, oh, that's like another level of freedom. You're not going to even argue that you might be on the right track. You're just going to go, oh, well, I don't have to do anything about that. That's one thing that just came to me really clear from the beginning of starting spirituality back up when I was 35 is you can just relax more. And really that's a separate self. You don't need to relax. You don't have the opposite of relaxation. I don't do the opposite of relaxation. But that's why it could be so free and easeful, because you are not that separate self. You are not that projected self. And, it's guaranteed that it's going to be abolished anyways. And it's going to use that ability that it has for suicide to basically be devoted. Like it just automatically gets devoted. It's already devoted to its own suicide anyways. So it directs that ability toward its own non-existence. It's basically, it's a trip. It's like once it is so much aware of who you are, you could say, once it's just so aware of who you are, it can't even be held out anymore. That's why it just disappears. Along with the whole world. The whole thing just disappears. All the tension, everything. I feel like even block therapy coming into the experience is just like all geared toward more relaxation. It's like even the body sense, it seems to be dense. Not only does it seem to be dense, all the density is painful. Not only that, not only does it seem to be dense, it's all painful. I mean, I imagine you start out as a little baby, right? And you're all freaking, you know how they're so soft. Even their bones are soft, right? Like they could fall and they like bounce. They don't break bones, right? That's the best time to abuse a baby. Just kidding. Don't do that. Of course, you don't have a choice in it, so I'm not afraid of you doing anything. But you don't have a choice, and you don't do anything. You get a perception, right? But where I was going with that is the baby's so soft, right? It hasn't accumulated the effect of the painful thought yet, but it doesn't take long. They don't get very old before they're like a pain, they're manifesting as a pain body, right? And the baby, even though it has like soft bones and things aren't particularly painful. Like when they move around, they're not particularly in pain. But even little babies, they cry, like they get colic or they get some kind of upset, they cry and stuff. That's all just a projection of that fearful thought. The fearful thought is pain. So as the baby body gets on in years, it becomes more and more painful until, you can witness people as they're aging, they're collapsing inside of themselves. Basically, their ribs are going inward and collapsing in on the organs. The shoulders are coming forward. It's like this whole painful, decrepit form that's taking place, right? And that's basically symbolic of having gone through time accumulating more thoughts for the separate self adding to itself. And at the same time, wishing for death. It's always wishing for death. Now, older people, they will say it right out because now all this pain is like right up on the surface, and they'll say, "Oh, I just want to put a bullet in my head," or something like that. I got an aunt that's doing that right now. There's just so much pain that she's just like, "Oh, I just want to put a bullet in my head." So, that just goes to show you, anyways, the separate self is going for its own abolishment, because according to the separate self, as far as it knows, once a physical death occurs, it's done either way, right? It's over with. That's like that thing, that projected separate self, it is done. And then there's a new separate self coming in to take its place with no memory of having ever been a separate self before, because it hasn't been. It's a new one. It's a new projection. It's like it's brand new. It could be the same thing repeated over and over and over again. But it's like a brand new, and that's like, it's basically the thought of separation going on over and over and over and over again. But according to it, it's new. And it's going to die anyways. So being that it's going to die anyways, and people think about their legacy, like what people are going to think of them after they're gone, like that's some kind of comfort or something like that. No, it's like either way, it's like, you're gone. As a separate self, that's it. You do not go on. Who you are is not the separate self. Who you really are is not the separate self. That you already know that. You go on, you're eternal. You don't need to learn that. Certainly don't need to learn that. And really, when it's the right time for your separate self is set out in time. You're not. When it's the right time for your separate self to hear this and take it in, it'll just occur. So the miracle establishes that you dream a dream and none of its content is true. The miracle is what comes from you. And you've made miracles many times, even when you were in your deepest delusional phases. Even then, because at points in time in your deep delusional phases, you have sincerely opened yourself. You have sincerely opened yourself as a separate self. You have opened yourself. You have made that choice for truth. And you have opened yourself to the reality. That's how you got some relief at that time. The one that you are, it's already aware that none of this is real. It's already aware. That's why the miracle comes from you. So the only aspect of creativity that remains in this dream is a choice between love and fear, between the truth and the illusion. That's the only aspect of creativity that's left. That's what you have. And you can't even know that you are having, you've given yourself the ability to make the choice between the truth and the illusion. You've given yourself that ability. Again, another ability that you have. You don't really need to make that choice, but you've given yourself that ability. Now, in the illusion, you've given yourself the ability to make choices between a bunch of different shit. But none of that means anything. That doesn't go anywhere. The only choice that means something is the choice between love and fear. So the reason I can be so carefree, basically carefree means not careful and not careless. I used to say it as care less. I meant the same thing. But just to articulate it a little bit clearer, carefree. And the reason I'm able to be so carefree, that's the separate self ability again, is that I've learned that everything's okay. We all get the sense, like, uh-oh, what did I say or something? Why did I say that? Why was I so mean? Why did I treat that person like that? That person's God. How could I treat him like that? For instance, look, the perception engenders guilt, just like the separate self does. So it's going to get it. As a separate self, you're going to get it. And, you know, it does definitely help to comfort it, because it's like, we've all accepted that the end of the separate self is physical death. We've all already accepted that. I mean, that's basically a given. Okay, here's this self that we made, and then it's gone. All right, that separate self, it's not coming back. We've all already accepted that's it. That's the end of it, right? There's a great fear about it, but that fear isn't even the same fear. It's not even the underlying fear. There's no real fear, but there's an underlying fear, and that's the fear of being completely abolished, like you didn't exist. Death is a little better to the separate self. Physical death is a little better to the separate self than being abolished. It's actually a lot less fearful. That's why people think they have a legacy and people are going to remember them after they're gone and stuff like that. Nothing is even happening here. No one's remembering you at any stage. No one's going to remember you. That's a dream. But you know, it's what you really want, because even as a separate self, you know that this is just set out in time to suffer. It's just set out in time to get the idea that suffering's real. And it's not really worth it. We, you know, as separate selves, we try to trick ourselves and trick each other into thinking, oh, this is beautiful. We want this. We only want it. We really only want it for one thing, and that's to abolish ourselves. We actually do want to abolish ourselves. It's just that there's fear about it. And really, when the self is abolished, there's nothing even remotely like that. There's nothing like that thing. I will say, though, that the self that you're experiencing, you're witnessing, there are certain aspects coming through that self. There are certain aspects coming through that self that's actually your uniqueness. So in a way, it's like you. You made it in your image, you could say. And that uniqueness about yourself, you love. You love it. And you know, the separate self is fond of it too. Look, you're not going to lose any aspect that's your uniqueness. And that's basically what about you, because it is, you know, it's your your uniqueness. It's what about you that doesn't engender any guilt. And, you know, that's like who you are, what you set out in time to engender guilt. That's what's going to be abolished. It's like I'm talking to two of you. It's very interesting. It's very interesting because it's like the separate self also at this point in time wants to know this. The separate self is tired of making suffering. To the separate self, suffering is real. You know, it can learn that suffering isn't real and it isn't true, but it is going to perceive it as if it is real and true via thoughts and feelings. That's the perception. So it's going to perceive the suffering as if it's real and true. Now, I'll tell you this, the more it learns that suffering isn't a reality, the more it gets alleviated from those intense feelings and thoughts. It gets, you can say, released from it. Those things get alleviated off of it. That's why as the separate self is going toward its own abolishment, its life actually gets easier. It may not get easier from a perceptual point of view, though. It may or may not get easier from a perceptual point of view. To a perceptual point of view, it might get harder, right? But the thing is, as the separate self is learning about relaxation and coming into acceptance of its own abolishment, that's beyond its own death, right? There isn't really any death because there isn't a separate self. But to the separate self, death is totally realistic, right? Because the separate self is already not real. So of course it believes in shit that's not real, like death. This abolishment is beyond that. The greatest fear for the separate self. So it develops bravery, courage. I remember how there was such fear. I think I was reading Maharaj many years ago, and I closed the book quickly. I just closed it quickly because he started talking about the person not being real. And it's like, whoa, I was like, and you know, I was aware enough at that time where it's like, I bet I don't want to hear that because I'm afraid of that. And then it was just like, oh, well, no need to force myself. The desire for it will arise in time, I'm sure. And that's how it is with this too. This is how it is with listening to me talk. You know, if it seems like, oh, I'm just not ready for that, that's okay. In time, you will be made ready. And you know how? You know how you're going to be made ready? Suffering and not wanting suffering. You're going to be made ready. You're going to try a bunch of different shit that doesn't involve abolishing yourself. You're going to try a whole bunch of different shit, different ways of spirituality. You're going to deny yourself. You're going to make suffering into a reality. One way you make suffering into a reality is, oh, it's so unfair for those who have to suffer so much more than others. That's hilarious. It's hilarious to me now. It's like any sense that something is unfair, that's a device of the ego. That's what you're using as a separate self to make yourself more real to yourself. Look how virtuous I am. I care about the other people's suffering. And I find it so unfair. See what I mean? That's making it real. That's hurting your own mind. That's making yourself vulnerable. All because you're afraid of being abolished as a separate self. You, who you are, okay, are not even capable of fear. You're not even capable of it. You projected that out in time and you immediately changed your mind. You immediately forgave the whole world. Now, your separate self, having being set out in time, doesn't realize that the forgiveness occurred and it's already abolished. So it's trying to go on, holding on to nothing. And it's through its own relaxation that it's going to allow the truth, which you are in. The way it's taught, though, in the less advanced phases, and the way it needs to be taught like that, is that there is actually a choice that has to be made. It's not until way further along that it's like, oh, I see, it's actually choiceless. So you may not be picking up what I'm laying down right now. And that's okay. It's just food for thought. I just got the sense that the whole thing just started to accelerate a lot more. And it seems like all that real recently, there was like some intense clenching. I had this, it's a trip because I've had these periods like this where it'll do this intense clenching in my mouth. I've had these periods where that will occur and then there will be relief and then it'll occur again and then there will be relief. What I see is that what is coming into awareness right now, there was a lot of resistance to this coming into awareness. And that's what that clamping down was all about. A lot of resistance to seeing in this way what is going on as far as the separate self, as far as this having been already forgiven. It just accelerates things so much more. And what I mean by that, oh, I could tell that it's accelerated so much more, is that it's like uncomfortable feeling or situation. It's already forgiven. It's no problem. So this morning I had the perception that Shopify was ripping me off, right? I've had great sales lately. It's been a trip. Well, not so much today, but day by day, it's not really like that. But it's been such a trip. It's like all of a sudden, like this past weekend was so busy. It took me like 3 hours to get my mail out today, which is long, especially since Tony already pulls everything and he puts it into groups. There was so much stuff. There was probably only like maybe only like 30 oils or so, or not oils, definitely not oils, 30 orders, but they were big. They were like good size orders. A couple of them were for over $500, right? So I'm like watching this thing going ching, 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 ching. You know, I get these little cha-chings whenever something pays on, there's a payment on Shopify, right? Cha-ching. I'm watching this thing. So this $500 freaking cha-ching comes in, right? And it's the second one of the weekend. And I go, oh, and all of a sudden it's like, I go, wow, what's the payout up to now? So I go and I look, and the payout's up to like, I don't know, it's like $4,000 or something like that. And I go, oh, interesting. So I press on and I look at the itemization of what's included in that payout, right? And this is something that I haven't perceived myself doing very often, to look at these itemizations. I go in there, and so I'm looking for that $500 in the itemizations. It's not there. It's not popping up. So I go back to the order, and sure enough, it says it's paid, and it says it'll be added to your next payout. So then I'm going back over and I'm looking at my payout, and I'm going, no, it's not there. So then I go, I'll just wait a little bit. So then I wait till the next day, go look at it again. It's still not there. So I get on chat with Shopify, right? And I go, hey, what's going on with this order number, such and such? And I got the impression, oh my goodness, wow, does this mean that in addition to being a business owner, and now I have to audit Shopify and make sure that they send me my fucking payments, right? So here's where it comes into play, what I'm talking about, right? Here's where it really comes into play. So immediately I'm getting the perception, this is as a separate self, okay? Because me, who I am, does not give a shit about $500, okay? It does not care, all right? It's ridiculous. This is ridiculous stuff. But the separate self, it is really caring about that $500, but not as much as before, for sure, not as much as before, right? It's definitely gone to a much more playful level. You know, the stress level for the separate self even is not anything near what it was when it took itself to be real, a lot more real than it does now. So there I am, texting with or chatting with Shopify, and just watching. All it is just watching how the interaction goes, what it feels like, and you know, and noticing that it's all delusional. It's not like I have to try to stop anything. I mean, I did text something in there and then go, that doesn't even make any sense, and then delete it and get it out of there, because it's just like complaining, you know. But just being really easy with it as a separate self. And you know, it's like you all your whole role in it, in this, as who you really are, your whole role in this is just witnessing, which you're doing effortlessly. Your whole role is just witnessing. That's totally effortless, right? So it's like that's it. It's just like you can be relaxed in it, right? So it ended up working out. Well, I don't know, I still don't have the $500, but apparently that's the first time I ever went to looking at it that deeply. So they said, oh yeah, well, that's because the payment was made through Shop Pay, and when that happens, it takes like 3 days. I'm like, dang, I must have been running this business since a little bit more than a year with this particular platform, Shopify, and have not noticed that that's what they do. And then at one point, there's just this drive to have this knowledge. And like, oh no, where's my $500? He said it was going to be in my next payout. I could already see my next payout. It's not there. It's not in there yet. It pays out every day. So the relief, though, comes not in knowing. The real relief comes in not in knowing that you're going to get your $500, because, you know, there would be relief either way. Either way, because, you know, this separate self that I set out in time, it is well skilled you could say, in recognizing what this is for. It's become well skilled in being willing. Of course, you know, there's that noticing that, oh yeah, I'm willing to release the $500 if that means being released. Like, I don't even care. I don't know what's going to happen to my business if that's going to be the case, if Shopify is going to randomly keep $500, which doesn't appear to be the case anyway. So I guess I'll keep on going. Just the fact that it doesn't really matter comes more and more into play for the separate self. It's like, oh, you know, you can witness that's basically a projection of suffering that doesn't exist, you know. And it was funny too, because I'm on chat. I wanted to come down and do my orders because I had a lot of orders to do. So I wanted to come down and do my orders early. And of course, I found myself in block therapy for a while, up till, you know, there wasn't that much time to take a shower and stuff. And then I also wanted to be chatting with Shopify because I wanted to know if I should send out that $500 order. I love to stoke people out, you know, and she'll probably get it tomorrow from Hawaii, which she's going to be stoked, especially first time customer, right? And if FedEx comes and picks it up, they guarantee it within 2 days to the mainland. A lot of times it's 1 day, right? So I love just thinking about people getting stoked out. So I want to get that order out. And then at the same time, I don't want to be sending out if Shopify is not going to be paying me. Like, just give the person their money back if you're not going to be paying me, right? So I'm in the shower and I'm on chat at the same time. At first, I have the phone in the shower with me so I could be chatting. I notice it's getting really wet. So then I put the phone on the toilet seat, which is right next to the shower because I have a tiny ass bathroom. I put it like right there and I can see it while I'm in the shower. I can't hear it for some reason. Shopify's chat, it seems like they do it like this on purpose. It doesn't make a noise when it comes through. And then if you don't see what they wrote right there, you know what they do? They disconnect you because they'll go, "Are you still with me?" And then you don't respond because you didn't see that and they'll just disconnect you. I'm like, that's just hilarious. That part of it is hilarious too. It's like, it's just by design. They don't really want to deal with you. You're full of shit anyways. Like, everything's fine. You know, you're just thinking there's a problem. That's why you got a phone and you're in the shower and you're chatting. So it's like, that's the thing. There's been so much allowance and gentleness that's just okay. That's why I don't have to try to hide it from myself. I don't have to try to cover it up. I don't think it's weird. I don't think it's a weird tendency. It's just, you know, the whole thing is weird. It's just, it's not, it doesn't act rationally. It doesn't really act rationally. Okay. It doesn't exist. And it's not up to me to try to make it act rational. So what's the fucking problem? It's on chat in the shower. That's what it's doing right now. I think it's fucking funny. Right? It's comedy. It's for comedy. That's it. Yes, here I am. Hey, Kahi, I don't know. You haven't been in our ACIM meetings, but it seems like you might be catching the vibe anyways, because that's one of the things we were talking about. I don't know if Anne remembers, but you know, we were reading about it. Here I am, Lord, basically. Do with me as you will. You know, show me how I'm being called to make miracles today. Basically, it's not like here I am as a limited thing that wants to get things for itself, right? Like you're in the listening mode. And it's not even here I am in a particular place. You're just in a listening mode. You're able to hear from the spirit. That doesn't mean you're trying to change what you're doing. So it's like when I get the perception that I'm in a shower with a phone, it's just so funny to me that it's almost like it jars me awake. You know, because within that, it's like, here I am. It's like witnessing all the thoughts and perceptions that are occurring to the separate self. And it's like, and it's like, you know, it's the separate self. It's from the separate self that's deciding to let compassion in for it, because it's not flipping out about it, flipping out about being delusional. That's just how it is. I mean, you could say our role, our function in that is forgiveness. Behind the view of the separate self, it's very gentle, it's very subtle. It's very, very subtle. It's just in allowing that separate self to be the separate self, play itself out, be the unreality that it is. What happens is the separate self gets afraid of being revealed to itself. Its tendencies, its murderous tendencies, its fearful tendencies. It is afraid of being revealed to itself because it's afraid of hating itself, which it already does hate itself, but it's afraid of hating itself. So it wants to be covered up. That's all. It wants to be hidden. It wants to be hidden from you. You are pure awareness. You don't have a choice in that. You're always in view. The separate self is always in your view, but it wants to be hidden from you because it's afraid. It's afraid of being seen. And that manifests in us trying to hide stuff from other people. I don't want them to know that about me. So the separate self, it is in a dream, learning and changing, growing into a separate self that accepts its own function in the world, which is basically to allow its own abolishment. Basically to accept that you already forgave the world. See, allowing its own abolishment is symbolic with relaxation, or it is synonymous with relaxation. Relaxation is the manifestation of abolishing yourself. It is that. So that's why, you know, it's a given that you're going to do it. You're going to abolish yourself. Because you want nothing more than you already want to relax. But with the way you're programmed to believe that your relaxation comes through death. And that is a great relaxation. Don't get me wrong. Physical death, it's a great relaxation. There isn't really, nothing is dying because nothing's there. That's why it's a great relaxation, right? But that sense, still that sense that of guilt, of fear, that continues to go on in the projected mind. The separate self that you made in the world, that disappears, but the projected mind goes on until it is revealed. See, the separate mind goes on to make another separate self. And one of them is not going to go through death. At some point in time, one of them is just going to be abolished. When it goes through death, it's not abolished in the world, right? It never was. It never existed in reality. But in world terms, it's not abolished, right? When the separate self is abolished, so is the world. Those are the same thing. That's why people like get scared. Like, I don't want to leave this world to these kids. This world is fucked up. I want to try to do something to fix this world, though I don't leave it to these kids. It's like, why don't you leave the world? Then none of the kids will be there. None of the kids will be there either. It's a lot harder, actually, to try to change the world. This is what a lot of my friends are doing. It's a lot more difficult to try to change the world, to leave a better world for the kids, than it actually is to abolish the world. That's actually simple, because it's a matter of relaxation. It's the opposite of all this doership. Oh, you're picking it up, Farah. Yes. All right. All right. Good job. Yay. I'm glad you're with me. Thank you. Yeah, I tell my friends too, and you know, they don't always believe me. You know, they go through cycles. They don't always believe me. I tell them, you know what? You've gone so far. You've come so far. Like you cannot even, when you get the sense that you've regressed and all this is, I know it's a thing. All this that Hope said, that was a bunch of bullshit. I'm a piece of shit. I can't do this. I'm not there yet. All that crap comes up. I don't buy into it. You try to act like you can't do it, and you're so addicted to your thought that you can't do it. I'm not buying into it. And that's why, you know, I see you flipping between the two. I can't do it. Holy shit. I am it. I got this, right? The doubt arises. And when the doubt arises, it could seem like you know, everything's lost cause. I've had my friend Farah before telling me, fuck this block therapy. I'm not doing this. All this is doing is just bringing up this pain that's never going to go away. It's never going to go away. But then I don't buy into it. I don't buy into it that she's really suffering either. You know, really, all I've got is laughter for that. It's all I've got. Now, when my friends are telling me that, often, not all of them, they're not all the same. As far as like what they're willing to hear and what they're willing to know at this point in time. You know, some of them, they're not willing to know anything. They just want to tell me that they're suffering. And they just want to like say that, and they don't want to hear anything about it. In that case, the healing still takes place, just through the willingness to see that there is no suffering, to see it for myself. Because that's the illusion, to try to get you to believe that there is really someone suffering there. And to get you to try to convince someone else that there's not suffering. Now, when they don't want to know that, that's why I said else like that. When they don't want to know that, that's just a reflection of an aspect of yourself that doesn't want to know that. You don't need to force it on any aspect. Like I said, be gentle with this separate self. The separate self that I made, you can call it my ego if you want. You can say Hope Johnson is my ego, okay? That separate self that I made, that separate self can take it. That separate self can take it at this point in time, can take the truth that there is no suffering, no matter what kind of suffering is popping up. So like if a friend will tell me, hey, it seems like you're suffering, just so you know, there's no suffering. I'll be like, thank you, no matter what, right? Not every separate self is at that point, right? So not every separate self can take that message. They would become very defensive to that message. I've seen that over time. I've seen myself go out and I witnessed myself go out and try to convince someone else who doesn't want to know it that the suffering isn't real. And boy, are they pissed. Boy, do they get pissed. They do not like that. That may be one reason why one of my sons still seems pissed to me this day. Because when he was a kid, I was like, oh, suffering isn't real. But the funny thing about it is, you know, even the pissed, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything to me. That's also just an illusion playing itself out. Still, a lot more learning has taken place since then. So there's not a desire even to try to force it on someone who's not ready. That's actually a sign of fear. It's actually a sign of your fear, like you need someone to agree with you that the world is not real. That's totally coming from the ego. You don't need anyone to agree with you. People will agree with you in time, and thank you too very much. They're going to thank you. They will agree with you in time, as you see. Now, you teach as you're learning, right? So it may seem like you're teaching something spiritual when you're telling someone that their suffering isn't real while they're in the midst of suffering. Even, you know, telling someone that other people's suffering isn't real when they are in the midst of suffering over that. And they want to keep, and here's the kicker though, they want to keep on suffering. If they want to keep on suffering, allowing them to keep on suffering is loving. Because then you're opening up to the fact that they're just kidding. They're not suffering. They're just kidding. They're only doing it for you. They're actually only presenting to you as if they are suffering because you said you wanted to uphold the world. And they're helping you do that. You can say you taught them how to suffer in your perception. Show me this. This is what I need to see. Otherwise, I'm going to release this world. I'm going to abolish myself if I see that that's really what the fear is. I'm going to abolish myself if I see that I don't exist. So do me a favor and show me some suffering that I can believe in and feel that it's unfair that you have to suffer like that. And feel like you have something to learn and I'm supposed to be teaching you that thing. So just it becomes taken so much lighter. I was like, if people want to know, they'll let me know. I'll just, notice their reactions. And we all, even as a separate self, want connection. We desire connection with people. Okay. As a separate self, even as a separate self. So, you can look at it this way. Your connections with people are going to be that much more harmonious when you're looking at it in a way like, oh, this is just perfect. It's just playing out perfectly. Even if you happen to perceive yourself saying something that made the other person upset, just that willingness to recognize that it's just perfect. It just puts like this softness around everything. Everything changes. That's how perceptions are. Everything just changes. It's changeful. Even the sense of a physical body gets to relax when there's willingness to be with the tension, the pain. Definitely doing a bunch of block therapy has been a good teacher for that because it's symbolic. I'm spending all these hours just being with the pain that I'm projecting onto the body sense. Feeling how dense these thought patterns are by recognizing the density of the tissues. They're just symbolic. That stuff's just symbolic. That's all the stuff we've been trying to hide from ourselves over years of thinking we're alive. So more and more as we go into the life, as we go through the life as a separate self, we're just more and more willing to relax into oblivion, to be obliterated. It's not a painful, people go, I don't mind dying. I'm not afraid of dying, but what I'm afraid of is the pain. And the kind of death that we set up for the separate self is a physical death that a lot of times involves pain leading up to it, especially if it's an old age one, right? It just gets more and more painful, apparently. Who knows what's going to happen with block therapy now? Holy shit. We didn't have anything like that in our perception that I know of. And we didn't have anything like that. And it's so simple too. It's a freaking block of wood. It is hilarious. It's hilarious how simple it is. And it's like, how can humanity be missing this? Like the whole old decrepit thing. Apparently it's just tension. And how humanity's been missing this, because when you're apparently using a block of wood like that in that way, your mind is open to some deep relaxation, which is the last thing your ego wants. The last thing, the projected self is so afraid of that much relaxation. Everything that it's trying to hold together, that it's trying to hold on to. You know, even when that came out of my mind about, oh, wow, now I've got to audit Shopify. There was a sense like, there's no need to do that. It doesn't even matter. None of this stuff even matters. There's no need for that. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But either way, there's no need for it. To hold on to that. You know, we set these things up. Okay, I just got to pay attention to this. I just got to pay attention to this thing over here and then this thing over here. I just have to take this supplement or whatever it is. That's held together with pain. It's held together as a body sense. So it's kind of like, I don't even have to think about that. Okay, thank goodness. I don't have to think about that thing. I don't have to think about taking the trash out once a week, whatever it is that we put on ourselves. None of this stuff is even occurring. And you know, the trash will still get taken out in the perception as much as it's maximally healing. Would we want to take the trash out any more than is maximally healing? Would we? Of course not. Of course, as a separate self, you might get the guidance. You can say, make a note, put it on your fridge, put it in your phone, whatever it takes to get it off of your mind. Put a reminder down, whatever it takes to get it off of your mind, because you don't have the faith for it. See, once you have the faith for it as a separate self, you don't even need any reminders or anything. It doesn't mean you have to be critical of yourself or, you know, I have a calendar. I put stuff on my calendar. I noticed as I was falling asleep today, it was probably about 20 minutes after 1 or so. Maybe it was 40 minutes after 1. I don't know. So it's getting kind of close to Wisdom Dialogues. Wisdom Dialogues at 3, right? And the thought occurred to me to put my alarm on so that I wake up in time for Wisdom Dialogues. And then it was like, there was just like all this faith in I'm going to wake up on time. It was just like, I knew I'd be waking up on time. And so there was no alarm, right? But there's no condemnation for, I mean, earlier today, I said I would have a telephone call with someone at 11 o'clock tomorrow. And as soon as I made that arrangement with that person, I'm over there putting it on my calendar with an alarm. So I know that I'm doing that thing. Oh, wait, now I realize I probably didn't put the alarm on there, but it doesn't matter. It's gentleness. Okay. It's gentleness. It's being gentle with whatever the separate self needs to feel okay. Right? Just to feel okay. It's okay. I don't have to try to make myself do something that's scary. You know, the way you would make yourself do something that's scary is to pile shame on yourself, which again, you don't really do. You only dream of it. You who's real, not the separate self, are not capable of harming yourself. The separate self in a dream piles guilt on itself. In a dream, the reason it's helpful to know that it's already forgiven is because as a separate self, you can be released from it instantly. Okay? These things, these tendencies They need to play out in your awareness. They play out in your awareness in as much as the separate self is willing to see that the guilt it's piling on itself is already forgiven. It's not a reality. That's what allows the separate self to actually be released from the guilt, is to know that it's not a reality, the guilt that it's piling on itself in a dream. Because there'll be no use for keep piling it on itself. There'd be no use to keep on going down that track. It makes no sense. It's like, oh, I don't need to make suffering for myself. And the only reason it's afraid of knowing that guilt that it's piling on itself isn't even real. The only reason it's afraid of knowing that it's afraid to relax. It wants to relax. This in the same way it wants death, and it's also afraid of death. It's in the same way. It wants death, but it's also afraid of death. In the same way, in the mind of the separate self, death is the ultimate relaxation. You've heard, I'll rest when I'm dead. See? So that ability can also be used toward getting that relaxation right now. That's why it says in A Course in Miracles, death is for, or not death, rest is for the living, not for the dead. No one's resting. No one's really resting in death. You rest in truth. Death is not truth. You rest in truth. And you are the living truth. You are the living truth, not your separate self. Not the one that's afraid of death, not the one that's afraid of relaxation. You're not afraid of relaxation. You are already in the ultimate relaxation. It needs to know what the separate self needs to know. And what it's learning in due course is that it's okay to relax some more. Because the veil is lifted through ultimate relaxation. The idea of death is what keeps you from ultimate relaxation. Making death into a reality. The same as making suffering into a reality. If you're aware that there's no such thing as suffering right now, great, good for you. You can call that phase 2. You are stoked. That's why I've told a bunch of my friends, you are in phase 2. Don't get disheartened when doubt comes up, which it will. You don't have to get disheartened when doubt comes up. It will come up. If you have accepted this, if you have accepted that there's no death, if you have accepted that this is an illusion, you're in phase 2. There's no turning back. You're going to get more and more lessons. Some of my friends' lessons get really intense too. All that reveals to me is that there's a really strong wish, which means nothing in the face of will. There's a really strong wish to still uphold this world and keep fear alive. Okay? Where they'll get these really intense perceptions and fall into really intense perception, right? I mean, to me, the perception wouldn't even really be intense to me. It's like, ooh, I could see how that's meant to be intense, though. I can see how that one's meant to be intense. I got one friend whose mom thinks she wants to kill her. The mom thinks that the friend wants to kill her. So she's, the friend is taking it all personal like that. And, what I share with my friends is like, man, it doesn't matter if it's a mom or a sibling or a stranger, whatever they're doing in my perception, that's hilarious because it's my perception. That's just hilarious to me, right? It's like, no, this one's too, you don't understand Hope. Hope doesn't understand me right now, basically, is what they'll be thinking. Hope doesn't even understand me. She can't understand me. She thinks I'm in phase 2. She thinks I'm this. And now, because of this kind of suffering, I deem myself as being unworthy again. So now I'm going to go get a professional counselor who will agree with me that this stuff is really happening, that this person is really here. And you know what? For me, that's fine with me. You're coming back. I know you're coming back. It's just a little segue. You're on a little segue. You're still in phase 2. You're not getting me to buy into it. You're not getting me to buy into it, that you've fallen from grace or something. And now it's time for you to pretend like illusions are true. That's it. You're kidding. You're trying to kid yourself. You went a little bit too far, too fast in your own mind. That was a little bit too much for too much abolishment of the separate self. So it's gripping on again. It's going to make this thing the thing that brings you into making illusions true. That's one reason why I went into activism, because I saw a bunch of my friends getting really distraught over this thing that seemed to be going on in the world with the mask and the things, and feeling like they wanted to step up, but they're even too afraid to step up. And big reason why they're afraid to step up, they're afraid of losing themselves in it. They're afraid of losing themselves in the activism. And that's what goes on all the time. I have one activist friend that calls me when she gets really lost in the activism. It's like, okay, Hope, I need you to bring me back, right? Because now I'm in so much suffering. I'm so stressed out. I'm so suffering. I just need you to bring me back. So she'll come and ask me and get some relief. She's the one who asked me, how can I leave this world like this? It's like, I understand. She was like, I understand that, that none of this is real and it's a dream. And, I'm going to leave this world. And the thing I'm concerned about is leaving this fucked up world to these kids. And, she's the one who got the huge relief. It's like, okay, well, you're looking at it in a way that's delusional, because your way of leaving the world is through death. The way you're being asked to leave the world is to be released from it, so that none of those kids are even in the world. There's not even a world like that. That's not really, the trajectory that we're on is to completely abolish the world so that no one needs to be suffering, right? So one big reason why I went into activism was just to show that that could be done without making it real. Even something like that. So the activists that were, I was the first activist that I knew of on the scene, that I actually knew of on the scene. I was the first one here in Hawaii, okay, that I was aware of. After a bit, I became aware of other people, because people would be like, find out what I'm doing and be like, hey, what the heck, you're doing that? And then things started to roll and more activism started to occur. But so many times I had interactions with activists who were taking things to be real and demonstrating to them, because they would ask me, how are you so good at it? And does it look so easy? And how are you so happy with it? And, I would just share with them, because it's not happening. That's really the bottom line. If I thought this was real, I would be lost. I'd be very lost. But because I know it's a game, I know it's not actually happening, That's why I can play in it. And that's why when the guidance comes that I'm done with that, I'm just done with it. You know, people would be trying to rope me back in too. It was so cute. It was so sweet. Other activists, you know, they'd go, well, I thought you'd come back in now that you know how dangerous this is and what they're doing now. They've taken another step and now it's even more scary than it was before. And, you know, I'll just be smiling and I'm like, nope, the guidance for that isn't there. And it's the same as it's been for me, from my perspective, none of it is actually happening. So that I could follow the guidance. And that was one thing that was really trippy for people. It's like, how can you be in it so much and so helping us so much and doing all this stuff and then just drop out right away? Because that's not what the illusion is for. That's actually not what it was for. A couple people got a little bit resentful, but they got over it really fast too. You know why? Because I just didn't hold it against myself at all. I was just like, that's just how it is. Are people going to get resentful? That's what will be grist for the mill if that occurs. That's what will be grist for the mill. Still to this day, they're asking, are you ever going to come back into it? And I just go, well, it's not up to me. I get the sense that I'm not, but then what do I know? It's not up to me. I could be called any which way. That I am here, like you said. He put it, here I am. Oh, the sweetie. That's what you want to be here for. You really do want to be here for. To just listen to the guidance, let yourself relax, get some relief. That's all. You love being abolished. You actually love it. As a separate self, you actually love it because it means relaxation all along the way. The opposite of being abolished is stressed out. You don't want that. That's the whole reason you're looking towards spirituality in the first place. It's a beautiful journey towards self-abolishment. You get to relax more and more and more. You get to be relieved of your pain. You get to be relieved of the sense that suffering is real. That's a big relaxation. Ah. Okay, what else we have? Wisdom of the world is foolishness with God. Yes, it is, Glenn. Hooray. Yes. Trying to stop doing is more doing. Funny as fuck. Relax now. That's really good, Glenn. I love that. I love that. That's it. Because it's the relaxation that takes place within the doing. Notice I didn't try to stop myself from being on chat in a shower. Right? It's relaxing within the doership, within the seeming stress. The separate self is getting relieved from the stress in the moment that there's accepting it. In the moment of seeing that projecting guilt over it, piling guilt on top of yourself is not helping you. And the funny thing is, when you see that piling guilt on yourself is not helping you, yourself stops piling the guilt on. Because as a separate self, all you want to do is be helpful to yourself. So when you see as a separate self, okay, that piling guilt on yourself is not helping you, you automatically stop doing that. You only do it because you think it's helpful. The only time you're ever going to do it is because you think it's helpful. And ultimately, you think it's helpful for holding up this world, which it is. But that's the opposite of relaxation. It's actually the opposite of what you really want. So, hooray, everyone. Yay. Thank you so much for joining and for listening today. I didn't see any questions. No one asked any questions. That's fine. Maybe I'll stop calling it Wisdom Dialogues. I don't know. But it makes it easy for people to find. Definitely keeping the same name makes it easy for people to find, because I don't know if you will actually find me on podcast channels if you just type in Hope Johnson. I don't know. You might. I haven't looked into it that deeply. You might not find me. But if you type in Hope Johnson Wisdom Dialogues, then it comes up. Okay. Same thing with YouTube. I don't know if I'm just going to pop up on YouTube if you just put in Hope Johnson. Okay. Margaret, I sat on many with no voice to speak. Love this experience listening. Thank you. I appreciate you. I love that you are listening as well. There's definitely no need for any questions unless the questions are being presented. It's in the Q&A section. Oh, it is? Nope, it's not there. I don't have any Q&As. Thank you, though. I didn't look over there. The thing is, when I'm on this, and I could see the bottom of the screen where it says Q&A right now, but not until I move my mouse. And then I see like a little red thing. It doesn't automatically tell me it's in the Q&A. So yeah, thanks for the reminder to look at the Q&A. Still, there's nothing there. Hey, Kahi said, oh, I thought it was Wisdom Monologues. Yeah, well, that's fine. I'm not going to try to defend the name at all. It's like whatever it is. When it first started, it was at Kalani, actually, on a retreat. And I just said, I don't know what this is, but I'm feeling a call to have everyone sit with me. This was in 2014, I believe. I just have a call to have everyone on the retreat sit with me for an hour, one time a day. So this is how it started. But it was more like people would ask me questions, they're there on retreat with me. And also, I'm new to it. I'm stumbling along. I'm just getting the call, and I'm actually feeling like I need the questions too. That's how it was at the beginning. I really felt like I needed that interaction. Whereas at this point, I don't feel like I need any interaction. It does seem like what needs to be there is an audience. But I have rambled to myself on a recorder before and put that up for you guys too. Yeah, definitely get real inspired with having just someone listening. That's fun. What do we have here? Oh, thank you, Margaret. I appreciate you so much. It's so fun that you still join with me. I met Margaret some years ago. Got introduced through a friend, immediately connected with her. And for a while there, I didn't even realize I didn't know that was her. I didn't realize she was on Wisdom Dialogues. And then I saw her in person again. I think it was in person where she told me she'd been listening. And I was like, oh my goodness, you're that Margaret. Sometimes I see these names and I don't think I even had any personal interaction with you before. So fun. Natalie, it says you. Why does it say you? Can you speak more about something you alluded to a few weeks ago? You mentioned that when the body dies, there's an in-between lives phase where the mind has no choice available to it. Like the benefit of perceiving a body is that there is a choice. Yeah. And we have to be in a body to see through the illusion. Did I understand this correctly? Yes. Yes. That's why we're projecting bodies. Okay. So like there's this in between projecting bodies. And that's like where we have the illusion of death. We have a deathless, you can call it a death realm, or you can call it deathless realm. I don't know. Deathless just popped out. Whatever. It's been referred to as a death realm. Okay, I've heard it referred to as that before, but really it's deathless because there's no death and there's no fear of death in that realm. There's no fear of physical death because there's no physicality. So it's much less dense. There's much less density because you don't have that projected fear of physical death, okay? You're not perceiving separate bodies. You're not perceiving external threats. but you are aware of a threat that you made of oblivion. You're afraid of being seen. You're afraid of God seeing you. Okay. So you have all this more lightness than you do than when you're projecting a body, but you're still afraid of God seeing you. It's like you're running from God. And so eventually what you're going to do is project a body out into time again, because you know that through the life, through projecting a body, through projecting suffering. And this is what they mean when they say everyone chose their own suffering. You know that through projecting suffering, you can make the choice as a separate self. You can make the choice to see through it. Okay. And that's how it's like, before you're a separate self, you're a seemingly separate being. Okay. Before you project yourself out in time, you're a seemingly separate being. So, you know, as that seemingly separate being, that you can, through the life, see through this. And that's why you really want to make a life. Okay. You want to make a life for yourself for that reason only. So yeah, that's where the choice comes in. That's where the choice between love and fear come in. Only thing is, you hypnotize yourself too at the same time with this fear of death and all these other choices that can seemingly prolong your life. Apparent choices that you can make that can seemingly prolong your life or make your life better or alleviate a threat. Okay. Margaret says, that I appreciate. Every time wonder if I'll engage. Most questions get, every time you wonder if you'll engage, most questions get answered as you speak. Yeah, that's because we're one mind. And see, the thing is, the thing that draws me to Wisdom Dialogues is sharing. So in sharing the same mind, it's like the questions are just made available to me. Now, I've noticed over the years in Wisdom Dialogues, remember, I got 9 years of experience now with Wisdom Dialogues. And over the years, there's been times where I'm sitting there speaking and I'll start to feel afraid. So it's like, at the same time, there's navigating that. It's like, okay, remembering what I'm here for. It's not time for being afraid. There's like navigating that within it too. And it's like at this point though, it's become, you could say the separate self has become skilled at it, just skilled at that, like navigating that, right? That fearful sense, like, what if I don't do it good enough? What if I don't say it good enough? What if I'm talking about the wrong thing? And that just allows more and more of an opening. So it's really healing for me to be having this Wisdom Dialogue. It's really healing for me to be having this, because it's a time where I'm setting apart to be very tuned in to what's being spoken to me and through me, and not to get wrapped up in the separate self ego ideas of I'm not good enough for this, whatever. It's, start imagining that I'm not qualified for it because of maybe, I remember at one point I was going, hey, you guys, I got this sense that because I smoked a spliff in the middle of the night, it was the middle of the night, and I was having a spliff, and I got the sense that I wasn't qualified to do Wisdom Dialogues because I'm smoking a spliff in the middle of the night. So basically, when I'm just sharing that in Wisdom Dialogues, I'm demonstrating to my own mind that that's meaningless. Okay, so that's one way that Wisdom Dialogues has helped me so much, because I'm just demonstrating. Remember, it's to engender guilt. The illusion is popping up to engender guilt. It's funny, when I just shared that just now, I got the sense that it's a spliff sounds good. And it's funny because I haven't smoked a spliff since sometime in February, like the middle of February. Apparently, there's no such thing. And it occurred to me, maybe smoking a spliff in the middle of the night sounds good. I don't know. Will it occur? I don't know. It really doesn't matter. And there's only so many times I'm going to have to say that and share that before it really sinks in. But that's a big one. That's a really big one in the mind. And that's one of the things is that if I do this, it means this about me. It doesn't mean anything. It does not mean anything. So, my friend Billy came over the other day, and he came over with this great weed. I mean, some good stuff. All right. You don't normally run across this kind of weed in Puna. This is like some really nice weed. Most of it's homegrown and stuff like that. So he's like, yeah, well, normally I would get out my pipe and smoke and smoke you out right now. And I go, well, why don't you get your pipe and let's smoke out? And he goes, oh, okay. So he comes over, he gets his pipe. He's kind of surprised. People think that when I say I haven't smoked a spliff since February, they think that I'm like not smoking any weed. That isn't the case. I seem to be smoking a heck of a lot less weed because apparently I was drawn more to the tobacco and weed for a time, for like 7 years. I'm like, oh, why don't you bring it on over? And in people's mind, it's kind of like they're making me fall off the wagon if they come over around offering me weed. For one thing, I don't have to say yes to it. I mean, I kind of have to because I don't have a choice in anything, but it's not like you can be a bad influence on me. So he brings the weed and at that point I'm going, yeah, when some weed this awesome comes around, I definitely feel more motivated to smoke some. Right. And then he's like leaving me some and he's like leaving me some weed. And I go, yeah, I'll probably smoke more often if I got that weed around. And he's like, oh, maybe I don't have to leave it for you. He didn't say maybe I shouldn't. He actually said, I don't have to leave it for you. And I go, no, you're not understanding. It doesn't fucking matter to me whether I smoke it or not. It does not matter. I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing, like, oh, you better keep it away from me because I might smoke more. I don't mind. That's not how it works for me at all. And that's only because as a separate self, I've gone through a certain amount of learning to where I don't have that. Oh, I better not have the good weed around. I got my spliff bag right here with the tobacco, and there's always weed. Tony still smokes weed. He grows his own, some of that shitty Puna weed. But still, it's fine in a spliff. I've got my spliff bag. In fact, I have one friend who comes over every so often, and she asked me if I still have the spliff bag and can she roll a spliff? And I go, yeah, go right ahead. And she goes up there and rolls a spliff. It's just, if it's interesting to me and I'm drawn to it, I don't mind. That's the gentleness that I'm talking about. Why would you mind? That's the gentleness that I'm talking about. So just watch that. Watch how you seem to mind. I had a woman in front of me tell me that she has to stop smoking. I have to stop smoking. And I go, why would you put that kind of pressure on yourself? Do you enjoy smoking? Yes, I do. Well, then why do you think your life is for making yourself do shit you don't want to do? Why would you think that your life is for that? It's actually for seeing through this guilt. She was really open to this. She was like, oh my goodness, I just felt my whole body go into goosebumps. And, it's just like, it's a recognition. It's a recognition. So either you recognize what I'm saying or you don't recognize it because you don't want to. And if you don't want to, that's okay. I mean, if that comes out and then she goes, fuck you, Hope, I'm addicted to cigarettes. It's like, okay, that's fine with me. It's not like they're going to get me on board with them. And it's not like I even have to tell them that. That'll only even come out if it's maximally healing. I told you about the friend who said they were addicted. They were addictive. I think they said they were addictive. They said, I'm not like you. I can't just do whatever I want because I get addicted to things. And it's like, no, you don't. You tell yourself you get addicted to things, and I don't tell myself that. That's the difference. Don't tell me that your mind is weak because I don't believe that. I'm not going to believe that. That's when he goes, wrong audience. And I took it as, yeah, I'm not the one to be telling that you're addictive. Go tell that to someone else who can agree with you on that. And that's when we both just busted up laughing because we were just like the wrong audience for each other. It was so good. It was so good. It was just so sweet, you know. So there's no rules for me. See how it in that instance, it was kind of like I was prodding that person. Right? They seem to not want to know. Actually, I can't know as a separate self. I can't know whether they want to know or not. You know, I can tell once they give me a really clear reaction where they're either recognizing, there's like they recognize or they don't want to recognize. Like in that case, it was he didn't want to recognize, but also at the same time, it was really sweet and fun because it was like, oh yeah, both wrong audience. Both true. Oh, Nosh for the soul. Jojo B, my love. Oh, I've known Jojo B for a while. Gosh, since probably like 2010 or something when I first moved to the island. Thank you. I love you. Oh, I appreciate you so much. And thanks for getting Miracle Botanicals. I always notice your orders coming in. It's so fun. It's so fun to see what you get. You freaking party. You know how to party. You like come in there and you get some stuff. Maggie says, not that Margaret, I know you like to be called Margaret. I met you as Maggie. And I know you don't mind if Maggie comes out, even though you prefer Margaret, because you're awesome like that. It's more, I'm here to listen. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate you listening. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, thank you too, Natalie. I'm going to see you soon. That's going to be fun. Yes. Ikai said, I appreciate you and Wisdom Dialogues. Reminds me not to take anything seriously. Yay, yay, yay. Oh, that's my heart's desire. Be relaxed. Go with the flow. Laugh more and stress less. You know what I really appreciate about you, Ekahi, is you are such a good example of that. And you have been even before you started coming to Wisdom Dialogues. You're just such a sweetheart. And it's like, there's this real devotion to taking things lightly. It's really beautiful. Thank you for your presence. And it also is just really nice to have such a sweet dude in the community, and you're not trying to bone up with everyone. That's really sweet too. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you, Jojo. I'm glad you're enjoying the oils, and thank you for loving me too. Ah, yay. Okay, Cynthia, hugging you all with love and light. I appreciate you, Hope. Yay. Oh, thank you. I know we have such a beautiful community, the Wisdom Dialogues community, don't we? And down there at Hawaiian Sanctuary. No, we're not at Hawaiian Sanctuary. We're at Kalani. We're down at Kalani where it all started. We're back over there on Fridays, 4 to 6. I was out dancing this weekend at the lawn, and a couple people stopped me and asked me again. They're always asking me if I'm speaking. That's why I felt motivated to ask Haley, hey, do you feel motivated to get me speaking again? And she said, yes. And so that's why I'm back over there. Some people were asking me, they were stoked that I'm speaking again. So I'll probably have more people showing up too, although we have plenty as it is right now. But what a community. And that's the main thing too, to know is this community is just absolutely gorgeous. It's like this community that's all geared toward being relaxed mentally, so that it's not like these are people who want to, even though they still may make you seem like you're responsible for hurting them, for instance. So it's just like a really light, easeful way of relating that everyone gets to engage in. And this is the way I relate. So it's really fun. So if you can make it down 4 to 6 on Fridays. I know Natalie will be there with me soon because she's coming to the island. It's such a blessing. So anyone wants to join me, Kalani, usually in the Blue Moon Room. Also, Kai Molino is basically facilitating this thing for me now. I thought it was going to be Haley when we started, but Kai Molino, after the first one, realized that he saw a need, that there was a need for someone to set this thing up. He's arriving to the space an hour and a half early to make it comfortable for everyone. He's putting down the padding. He's putting the chairs. He's getting the blocks out, the yoga blocks out, so they're easy for people to grab, and just you can lay down there. People have asked me, is it okay if I sleep? Yes, it's totally okay if you sleep there. It's a very big space, and so one woman came and asked, "Do you mind if I pace?" I said, "No, please pace," because she could go behind where everyone else is looking at me. I go, just, keep it around like behind where everyone else is, so they're not getting distracted. There's some people that want to just like stay focused and have a different kind of experience. Yeah, I mean, short of making a bunch of noise, you can pretty much do whatever you want in the space just to be comfortable. You don't have to sit in a cross-legged position like I do for 2 hours. Not everyone's ready for that. Anne is. Freaking Anne, some of these people, because they do come and they do sit very still, they really help me because they're holding it all down with me, right? They're like it's like they're helping me to hold a space. Another woman started coming, her name is Carol, and she sits directly in front of me and she holds a space, a still space, just like the whole entire time. I don't require that of people, though. Everyone is in their different phases. So just being there is plenty. Stacy, couldn't chat. I was on a block, but it was all amaze balls. Yes, Stacy. I love how many people are on a block. Did you hear about that from me too, Stacy? Or is it or did you just happen to already know about block therapy before we started? I don't know if you're still on. That was 17 minutes ago that you made that comment. But yeah, I'd be curious to know. I do know that a lot of people started using block therapy since I started mentioning it, and people are just like, oh my goodness. Yeah, you're right. No need to say anything when you're on a block. You're just like, oh, I'm so grateful for that. Oh, I love you guys so much. Yay. Okay, you guys, until next week, visit Miracle Botanicals if you want the best essential oils in the world. Check out my blog. Go to Miracle Botanicals blog. Get signed up for my newsletter. Okay, I have a really fun newsletter. My blog, I've been doing all kinds of stuff. I'm a pretty good writer. As a separate self, I could say a pretty darn good writer. It happens to be one of my gifts. I love to share about the plant medicine, and I think you'll find my little articles and stuff entertaining, as well as very informative about plant medicine. So if you want to do some of that kind of reading, you can check it out. Essential oils has been very helpful for me. Wonderful tools for awakening. I actually consider them more like companions because of the consciousness that's coming through those. The consciousness that's coming through essential oils, they're actually consciousness. Okay, everything is consciousness, and the reason you could see these variances in vibration is like how much awareness of the truth is allowed to come through, is being allowed to come through. So with an essential oil, their consciousness is way more advanced than the average human. So the way I used essential oils when I first started out, and still do now, is when I'm engaged in a pattern and don't feel like I have any sense of awareness. Let's say I have no sense of awareness in a pattern, awareness of the truth, awareness of who I am. It feels like I'm stuck. An essential oil, just smelling an essential oil, reminds me of my power. Okay, reminds me of the power and the ability that I gave to myself as a separate self. Because like as myself, I don't need to be reminded of my power. Like I already know about it, right? But as a separate self, I've given myself these abilities. I've given and all of them really are reflecting one ability, the ability to choose between love and fear. Okay, the ability to choose between love and fear. So it brings me back to awareness of my power in that. And that's the aspect of creativity that's been given me to be able to relax. Essential oils know this, And they're very helpful in that regard. Also, they bypass the ego mind because they're just at a totally different level. They bypass the ego mind and they speak to your mind on a more etheric level, very gently, very gently. So yeah, it's like whatever resonates with you. If the aroma resonates with you, then that's one that you can use, right? And some people resonate with some stinky shit. I'm one of them, you know. That's really a matter of perspective, though. Not everyone thinks the same things are stinky. I mean, cedar wood, to me, that just smells like the sweetest. And to most people, such a sweet smelling wood, super economical too. By the way, it's free shipping and you can buy something, I think as low as like $9.97 or something like that and get it shipped to you. Cedar wood may be one like that. I'm not sure how low it is, but it's definitely an economical price. Smells so sweet to most people. Some people, a few people can't even have it around them, can't even be around them. So you never know. And that's why I have a return policy that's like 100%. If you get it, you don't like it, return that shit. I will give your money back. Okay. There's no need for any kind of upset feeling over your purchase. That's definitely not a need for that. In fact, I might just say, you know what? Keep it. Here's a refund. Give it to someone that can appreciate it, because someone in your life will probably be appreciative of it. Okay. Yay. As you can see, I'm not really in it for the money. And there's a lot of trust there. There's a lot of trust there to have a 100% return policy like that. There's definitely a lot of trust. And I just tell people, yeah, go ahead. And I had someone tell me he got ounces of frankincense, which, you know, when you're buying ounces, then it like adds up pretty much. Frankincense is pretty economical if you're just getting a little bottle. But he's like, you know what? This wasn't what I thought it was. I just want to return it. And I said, okay, here's your return label. I still haven't seen the frankincense come back, but it's like, probably got like a couple $100 worth of stuff or something like that. But the thing is, any kind of stress or tension that comes up about losing something in the field, so to speak, it's like it's being used as a means for getting more relaxation. So that's why I appreciate it. If that's what you need to do to feel good, I have some customers that are like, I'm like, you can just return it. They'll be like, I wouldn't do that to you. Like to them, that feels bad to them, right? But if it feels good to you, if it feels better to you that you got your money back, great. I'm all happy to do that. Okay. There's plenty. And I always know there's going to be enough. I always know there's going to be enough flow to keep Miracle Botanicals in business, but only as long as it's maximally beneficial. Okay. And no one can break it for me. Yay. So hooray, everyone. If you want to donate, Cash App, Hope Johnson 7. Okay. If you want to offer technical assistance, I could use it. Let me know. Reach out to me. Thank you. I love you. And until next week, aloha, mahalo, and a hui ho.